last week, McCole Hardman to IR. Is that the extent of it?
That's the extent of it that I know of. So that means there's an open roster spot next week. So I wonder if they re-sign Brandon Codrington to the roster next week. I don't know. Or do they sign Gabe Davis to the roster next week? Because this is now his second elevation. He only gets 3. If you go 3 elevations with Gabe Davis and you don't put him on the roster, well, Gabe Davis can go sign somewhere else too, by the way, right? He'll be he's a free agent as a practice squad guy. He's technically a free agent. He is actually. So I just think that there's got to be some moves coming next week here, and we'll find out what that is. Right now, only 52 players on the roster with this move. It really, it stinks for McCole Hardman Jr., and it stinks for the Bills' return game because he gave it a lot of juice. I mean, that helped a lot in the first kickoff of the game, and took it past midfield. That was really great. Obviously, and we know why Latu's up, guys, because there's no Dalton Kincaid. They want to roll with 3 tight ends. We still don't know, and we won't know until 6:45 p.m. Eastern time when the inactives come out, if Keon Coleman will be active or inactive. According to all the various reports out there, it looks like that in Cover 1 reported, as they did last week, and they were right on that, so we'll credit them if they are again, that he is inactive, but nothing's official until that happens.
So, if I may, forgive me if I'm being naive here, Kaleki Latu is the player. So if they're at 52, is that then there'll be one fewer player inactive tonight? They're not going to play a man short.
No.
And is the reason for this like a matter of the limitations on moves when it comes to the practice squad, or else why not bring up someone else? Maybe they just don't need to if they don't plan on playing them.
No, it doesn't matter, Mike. You'll still get, what happens is on game day, as long as you have 8 active offensive linemen, you get 48 active players. So it could be 48 out of 53. Well, I guess now, because you elevate 2, you'd be 48 out of 55, or you'd be 48 out of 54. It doesn't matter. But you still get 48 active players. You'd have 1 less inactive tonight is what you'd have.
Right. And with Codrington not being on the active roster and not being elevated, what do you think that means to is that a sign that Khalil Shakir is returning punts? Probably,
yeah. I do find it interesting. Shakir really didn't practice this week because him and his wife welcomed a child into the world. But he dealt with the ribs and the ankle, but he did play last week. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I think that Keon Coleman would be active just to return punts, but he has actually done it too if you wanted to do something like that. I don't think they would. It just seems like he would be the only real option here, would be Khalil Shakir to return punts, unless someone like Elijah Moore, who's done it a little bit, I guess. But, yeah, to me, this means Khalil Shakir is probably returning punts tonight.
No one else on the roster other than Coleman, with Codrington not here and with Hardman on IR, has returned a punt all season, except for Shakir. Like, Shakir has 6, Coleman has 1, and that's everybody. So Samuel is, kick returns, Davis, but that's a different job.
Right, and Samuel's already out.
And Samuel's already out.
So kick returns is probably Ray Davis and Ty Johnson then, or I guess it could be Elijah Moore. Has he done that at all? I don't even know. And that's if he's active, which I would guess. It sounds like we've talked already with the short week a couple of times around this, trying to figure out what Coleman's way back onto the game day roster would be. I thought Davis was the linchpin there. Like, if they trusted Davis enough health-wise after not playing for so long, then playing a game on Sunday, short week, that to me had to be, because I thought really with Samuel down, we knew that earlier in the week, that probably Moore would replace him. And if Davis is up, then I think that all but cinches it for Coleman.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. It feels like that's the case, especially just after how well those guys, Tyrell Shavers and Gabe Davis, seamlessly just fit into the offense and played last week. I thought it was a tough ask to even think about Keon Coleman coming in from a personnel standpoint, let alone a discipline standpoint. He could do everything right all week. He could show up at meetings all week on time. He could have a great week of practice, but hey, man, they just threw for 270 yards, and the offense looked good last week, and Tyrell Shavers gave you everything you needed on the boundary, and Gabe Davis was available in the scramble drill and, had a big 4th down catch. I mean, where do you fit him? What do you do?
Yeah, Coleman being inactive, but there's just some chatter I'm seeing on social media, like fans wondering if he's had been a problem this week or something. I never thought that had to. I'm not telling you I know that it didn't happen, but him being inactive to me does not have to be a sign that they don't like how he handled himself this week at all. It's just simply we were productive. It's a short turnaround, and Gabe Davis right now maybe outranks you. That's it.
Yeah, that's right. And I agree with you. And I would not jump to a conclusion that if Keon is indeed inactive, he did anything to warrant that from a discipline standpoint. I think this is just a tough ask from a game last week where these guys played well. You scored a lot of points. You have 4 days to prepare. And what do you do on a short week? All players will tell you, coaches will tell you, you can't start getting exotic in a short week. You go out there and you play. Like, you line up and you play, and this is not a familiar opponent. The Texans, the Bills, they don't know each other that well. They're not a division team. You go out there and you play. So I think that you're probably looking at Keon being inactive tonight. We'll see what happens there. And then you get 10 days. And how does he acclimate himself? That's the next test, right? Yep. I mean, that's 10 days before they play the Pittsburgh Steelers, and that's okay. Getting back to the facility, doing everything right, having a practice week, and seeing where it goes right there.
Sal Capaccio with us. Countdown to kickoff. It's the Northtown Hyundai pregame huddle. Northtown Hyundai, Western New York's premier Hyundai dealership. So what do you think the Bills on offense tonight want to be like? Is it a continuation of last week? If they can pull it off, it's a very different challenge that they're facing. But are you thinking more that they want to try to run back what went well last week, or are we going to maybe instead see the Bills try at least to get back to James Cook?
I mean, I think they'll try to get back to James Cook because it's what they do best. They run the ball best. But, I mean, this is the biggest challenge they faced all year. The number one scoring defense in the league, the number one overall defense in the league. I mean, you can't really pick anything that you can do really well against the Texans that other teams have done well. So I think you lean into your strengths here. You run the ball with James Cook, and you try to establish a run game. And the bigger reason for that would be also you don't want to be, if you can at least get 3-4 yards on first down and second down and get in third and short, you're not putting Josh in a third and long situation against these edge rushers. You're not putting him in a third and long situation, try and sit back there and have D'Amico Ryans and his Texans come after you and take shots. So I think that's the way you have to play it tonight. And then I would really like to see the running backs get involved in the pass game tonight. I think that, you go against these Texans linebackers are very good. Maybe you can try to take a little advantage of them in the cover game. If you have to use Ty Johnson and James Cook, they both had big catch and run last week. I'm glad to see them getting back involved in the passing game. No Dalton Kincaid really hurts this team tonight. And then we've talked about what's going on with Jalen Petrie, a fantastic player. Miles Bryant comes in, and that was Isaiah McKenzie beat Miles Bryant all over the field when he was in New England a couple of years ago. And maybe there's a matchup there with Shakir or even Elijah Moore that you can try to take advantage of on a few plays.
Yeah, I like the middle of the field in this game, Sal. I think the corners on the outside are very good to excellent.
Corners.
Right. So, I don't want to say like don't fly there at all, but I feel like if there's a spot, maybe get it out quick. Even you mentioned the running backs, and I know I don't want to build my offense around like outlet passes necessarily, but with this pass rush, I could see keeping a running back in and then leaking out into the middle, and that being a way to sort of get out of some situations where maybe the rush is a problem and might have a good matchup in the middle of the field with either Ty Johnson or James Cook.
Yeah, I like that thought. And who else might be a sneaky play tonight is Jackson Hawes. If Jackson Hawes didn't Dawson Knox outsnapped him pretty significantly on Sunday. I think this is a kind of game to further your point, Bulldog. If you want to really establish a run, you put Jackson Hawes out there. He's not this pass-catching, stretching tight end, but we've seen him, catch a few passes here and there. And if the Texans want to counter personnel with knowing, hey, he's on the field, he's going to be a blocker, maybe there's an opportunity or two to get him, involved in the passing game for a few catches.
So, Sal, what about on defense for the Bills against Davis Mills, not C.J. Stroud, still out with a concussion? This is going into a fourth game. He'll miss at least some of, so it doesn't sound great. But Mills has been around. He was the predecessor to Stroud. He led the Texans in passing for a couple of seasons before they drafted Stroud. Is he your average backup, better or worse? What kind of threat is Davis Mills?
I actually always thought that Davis Mills could compete for a starting job on some teams in this league. I've been a fan of his as a guy that's come into this league, and I thought, can't remember the exact draft class who he was with, but I always remember thinking, maybe he's the guy that would come out of that class because what we saw early on in his career. I think there are spots in this league where he could see more playing time and have a chance to compete for a starting job. But he is a backup quarterback. He comes in here, and I think he's very smart for this one reason. He throws the ball a lot to Nico Collins. I mean, Nico Collins had... He had 16 catches over the last 2 weeks. I think 26 catches or 24 catches, something like that. 23 now, I add in my head, over the last 3 games. 192 yards over the last 2 games. It is get used to Nico Collins getting the ball fed to him tonight. So I think the Bills understand. That's what they have to do. They have to shut down and slow down Nico Collins because that's exactly what Davis Mills is going to want to do. That being said, he's an accurate passer. He knows where to throw the ball. He's a smart guy. Not that he has this highest completion percentage, but he's a guy that's seen everything. He's seen the Bills before in a Sean McDermott defense a few years ago. It didn't go as well for Houston in that game, 2 different teams. But he's a guy that's been around the league enough, and they trust him. They trust him enough to throw the ball a lot when they had to the last 2 weeks.
Yep. Benford did a great job. I think he followed Ibuka around pretty considerably. I think they gave him some help too, but they did a great job on one of the best young receivers, rookie receiver at that, in the league last week. Would you expect Benford to pretty much shadow Nico Collins?
It's a good question. I don't know. I think that it's very possible we see that, but I think the Bills don't love doing that, you know what I mean? But in this case like this, maybe I would expect maybe some double teams on Nico, and maybe then you don't have to have Benford necessarily follow him around,
right?
Because I think you want to force other guys to beat you, right? I mean, Xavier Hutchinson's done a nice job. They have some guys. Noel has been a nice player for them, and then of course there's Dalton Schultz, who's a really good tight end. But if I'm going to choose my poison, I'm going to have Schultz beat me instead of Nico Collins, right? And if I can force things to somebody else, I think that's the game plan, what you want to do.
How about the Bills linebackers, Sal? We took a call earlier today, making the point about Bernard, his foot speed. He's very, I think, clearly laboring. I think he's even said he's not 100%, but he's good enough to play. Milano's had, I think, a pretty uneven year. And I'm just curious, like Shaq Thompson is expected to be back, right? Like he was full all week, I think.
That's right, yes.
And I just wonder where we're at with the linebackers here, because I have sympathy for Bernard playing through something, but there have been some moments, open field with Baker Mayfield last week for one, that just, boy, it's tough to see the state that both he and Milano, I think, largely this year have been in.
Yeah, a little bit of a homecoming for Terrell Bernard. He's from LaPorte, Texas. Played his college ball at Baylor, so I'm sure he'd love to, put on a good showing here tonight. And I thought he played his best game of the year last Sunday. I know that sounds weird when they had 200 yards rushing against them, but from a standpoint of his movement, from filling holes, getting there, in the pass game, a couple of pass breakups. From that standpoint, I thought Terrell was much better last week, and I think that's a good sign that he's getting healthier. There's no doubt he's been dealing with the ankle. It has definitely impacted him. And, from start to finish this year, despite the fact that he has been unavailable a lot, Shaq Thompson's been their most consistent linebacker.
Right.
So if you can get him healthy and back tonight, and he becomes an option to put on the field in base defense, I think that would really help the Bills, obviously, in those situations. But Matt Milano has not had the splash plays that we've seen from him in the past. I do attribute some of that to the fact that, yes, he's getting older, he's coming off some injuries, but this Bills defensive line has been so banged up, it's been hard to keep guys off their linebackers.
Yep.
That's where it starts. It's got to start up front. And, when you can get these 300-pound offensive linemen, 300-pound plus, getting out in space on undersized linebackers like Bernard and Milano, it's just going to really neutralize them. And I think that's a lot of what's happened. And I think because of Bernard's injury, it's just he has not been able to shed those as much or get around those as much as we're used to seeing.
Well, if Davis Mills falters, then the Bills should be fine. But if he doesn't, a lot of narrative stuff to like about the Texans here. The obvious short week home game thing with the Bills having to travel. But 5-5, it's a big game for the Bills if we want to keep talking about first place and a bye. It's not everything, though, otherwise to them. They'd still be likely to make the playoffs. Not so for Houston, which would fall to 5-6 with a loss. They are underdogs. Their next 2 games are against the Colts and the Chiefs. So they've won the division 2 years in a row. They have good players. It's a franchise, I think, that has higher expectations than third place in the AFC South. going into Week 12. I would expect a good performance from Houston.
Yeah, just on the tail, to tail that, they are 55% to make the playoffs with a win tonight. It drops to 23% with a loss.
And their point differential is almost the same as the Bills.
It's a pretty big swing.
Huge leverage game for the Texans' playoff chances. And I'll throw this out there. If the Texans win this game tonight, they're a game back of the Bills with head-to-head. So they're half game back. I mean, and the Bills obviously see the division kind of slipping away, so you're fighting wild card now, right? You're fighting for a wild card. And at the end of the year, if you wind up tied with the Houston Texans with a record, well, they're going to have that tiebreaker on you, right? So, yeah, this is a massive game for both teams. If you can win this game, if you're the Bills, you can basically go 3 games up on a team like Houston and still keep pace with New England. You lose this game, the Texans are right there. They're within striking distance. How about the fact that Daniel Jones is on the injury list now for the Chiefs? The Colts, for the Colts, they go to the Chiefs this week. The Colts have a tough schedule. The Texans probably see it in their window where, hey, you know what? We get a win here tonight. We can really make some room here and try to catch these guys. So I think that's interesting. And remember, guys, a week ago, before after the Miami game, we talked, and I said, guys, over the next 10 days, this was a week Monday, so over the next 10 days, the trajectory of the Bills season is really riding on what could happen because they could still sit and be here and go 8-3. Now, with a win, that's the case, and now you're still only a game behind New England with playing them still in a few weeks.
Very good. Sal Capaccio joining us from the inner sanctum of the Houston Texans offices. We'll try again as we get closer to game time.
All right, guys. By then, I'll be out in the field. I'll talk to you then.
Okay. Time now for Tailgate Trivia, presented by TSE Buffalo. Be the first caller to correctly answer our Tailgate Trivia question, and you'll win a Buffalo Bills autographed merch item courtesy of Total Sports Enterprises Buffalo. The number to call, 716-221-4WGR. That's 4947. They want these questions to be about the team that the Bills are playing. So I'll give you this one. Who leads the Texans this season in receptions? Who leads the Texans this season so far in receptions? Again, the phone number, 221-4947. We'll talk some more about tonight's game next. That's what's on tap, brought to you by Miller Lite. It's Miller time, Bills fans. Mike Schopp and the Bulldog here. This is the Buffalo Bills